Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of UpGrade with Maria Kay, the podcast where your success, freedom, and happiness get a weekly boost. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Maria Kay, and I help people all over the world convert their dreams into reality, take their lives from mediocre to outstanding. If you haven't already done so, hop along over to the Facebook group, UpGrade with Maria Kay. Join us. We're having a blast over there. Share with us what's going on for you in your life, how your upgrade journey is panning out for you. Do you have any questions, perhaps? Do you have any issues or any breakthroughs that you want to share, perhaps from the recent weeks? I'm excited today because we have a special guest, Sarah Jane Farrell. She helps women all around the world move from a space of stagnancy, depression, and into their true, authentic selves, happy, free, and successful in whatever capacity that is for them. Sarah Jane, yay, welcome.
Oh, hi, Maria. It's great to be here with you. Thanks for having me on your show.
Well, Sarah Jane and I have some history together. We've worked with each other in the past. So I absolutely adore connecting with you, Sarah Jane, and coming together as two women, first and foremost, to share with other men and women how it is possible to take your life from a place of mediocre to that real blissful, outstanding place. I love vibing off you. Today's topic is how to access your true nature and then utilize it to accelerate your upgrade. So first of all, I want us to start by really covering what is true nature? What does it mean to be the real you? Do you want to start, Sarah Jane, and just give our audience today a bit of a snippet of what that means for you and for your clients?
Oh, absolutely. It's a great question because a lot of people don't really language like, oh, I want to live in my true nature. But for me, that's my company name is Accessing Your True Nature, because it's the part of us that we buried often so deep underneath chaos and trauma and drama that we don't even know who we are anymore. So our standard operating procedure really becomes something that is not you, or what I call the anti-you, or the unconscious you. Because we know this really, really well, how we show up in the world is oftentimes what creates, in fact, not often, it's always what creates the disease, because we are reacting rather than co-creating from a space of where we are not in our truth with our environment. So I always say, we're kind of like our epigenetics or our genomes or our DNA or how we come into this world is kind of like the gun, but the environment is the trigger. And so how we are in response to living in our true nature is often misidentified and misapplied as something that's not true to us. It's how we fit in, how we fit into the world, and how we get into challenges, which is, not easy, which is just the opposite of disease, of becoming depressed. And we don't even know that we're depressed because we are so lost in fitting in. And I think that's just a common struggle with humanity as a whole, is that we have this difficulty, don't we, in trusting our heart. So for me, to live in your true nature is really just to come back to living wholeheartedly, to really trust ourselves and to trust our hearts and have that capacity to be open to not just feeling happy, seeing the beauty in the world, but also being more than okay with the sadness and the suffering. Because it's part of who we are. It's a human condition, isn't it, to just think that the only way we can validate our reality is to suffer through things with everybody else. So, that's
I know that very, very well. Yeah, I know that very well. And you touched on those that kind of invitation from our inner being when it's time to maybe make a change or maybe realign with our true nature. We're going to be sort of unraveling what it means to live as your true self throughout the podcast. But what you touched on there really highlighted something that I've done quite recently, which is take notice of what my truth was, sort of guiding me towards. And it took a while. I talk about it in previous podcasts as well. But the fact that so very often our life in general is calling us forward. It's sort of pushing us in a different direction. But because it's inconvenient, it's scary, it's going to rock the boat, it's not in line with our cultural beliefs, our familial traditions, a million and one different sort of restraints or constraints, we put a block on it. We, as you say, we kind of stuff it down. And one of the biggest indicators of what your true nature is, who you really are your desires. What you desire, what you're interested in, what you're drawn towards. So there's tip number one, guys. Take notice of your desires because they are pulling you towards, or they are encouraging you to peel away one of those layers that you've developed throughout your life that actually isn't who you really are. And this is touching on what Sarah Jane said. It's actually a reflection of society, the people around you, your loved ones, your family, your education, perhaps. So within the last sort of 18 to 24 months, I had a deep desire. Now, you and I, Sarah Jane, have both been on a journey of UpGrade for as long as we can remember. And because we've been on it for a long time, it doesn't mean that it's been a failure. Quite the opposite. You never get it done. You never get to a point where you're complete. Otherwise, life would be over in the way that we know it. But most recently, one of my biggest upgrades was to completely overhaul my life, move from the UK and relocate to India. And just to give a bit of context, that was a desire that was crazy. If you were to look at the way my life was set up, very secure, very successful, the house, the kids, the partner, the car, the successful business, it just didn't make sense to pull children out of school and leave 4 family cats. And it just didn't make sense. But it was part of my true nature. So, touching on what you said earlier on, Sarah Jane, about we kind of just settle. It's very easy to just settle. And this is the key point. In the lead up to the period of time where I started to make the decision, I had what I call low-level depression. It wasn't, stopping me from getting up in the morning. It wasn't, impinging too much on my life because I didn't allow it to escalate. And because I have developed such a great self-awareness, I started to detect it. Now, what that is one of the big indicators that you are not living in your true nature. What would you say to that, Sarah Jane?
Absolutely. I think that what you're saying is that you don't really need to be 100% certain to act on things. I mean, that depression can show up in so many ways, and we know it as perfectionism or workaholism or fear or shame. It has so many faces, and I know that I struggled to a greater or lesser degree with that kind of heaviness throughout my whole life. And I think I got my official crazy papers back in 2003, where I literally had a breakdown to get to that place where depression is really that gift of calling us back to transform. And like you said, most of the time when it comes to actualizing that we're out of congruence or we're so far off how we're here to live as the greatest version of ourselves, sometimes it does show up as a breakdown or a disease of some sort, because it's the only way our bodies can get our attention to follow the truth of who we're supposed to be. And, you know, we're not forcing things here. We're really just navigating into a different place where it is very scary sometimes, because you don't know where you're going and you don't know what it's going to look like. Just like, you know, it takes an incredible amount of courage to actually act on that like you did, to, you know, leave your life not as a place of not enough, but that you wanted more. You know, it's a potential for growth, isn't it, always, to really start to heal. You know, you don't need to heal from a pill. You know, so many, I think it's 1 in 4 women worldwide suffers from some form of depression, and it comes from this place of not enoughness. You know, not enough of anything, not enough life, not enough living, not enough joy. We've forgotten how to be happy. And I think underneath that, there really is this procrastination, which again is depression, in a sense of waiting for your kids to grow up, which you didn't do. You know, I think you are such an inspiration in the fact that you problem solved your way through it because your desire was strong enough to pull you into that, even though you had no idea where you were going. So, you know, I always say you've got to get in touch with that desire in the body and respond to it in a way that isn't against your true nature, because that's where, like you say, we kind of go into more depression or a deeper feeling of hopelessness, or more, you know, creating some kind of emergency or tragedy, as if that's the only way that we can transform or get ourselves closer to desire. And most people don't act on that. Most people just shut themselves a little bit more and maybe stuff down with food to numb out that sense of, I'm out of balance here. What do I need to do to change this? And not have to know what that looks like. You know, and I think it takes a lot of love and kindness towards that part of yourself that feels uncertain and afraid in how to respond or how to take that action.
And this is why you and I do what we do, Sarah Jane, because I know that you are on exactly the same wavelength as me, and that you are passionate about showing and helping and assisting and guiding and facilitating. And specifically, you work with women. I work with both men and women, but we are passionate about helping people find the courage, reconnect to the courage, because I say that, you know, a dream is a great idea, but without courage, it really just remains an idea. So I know that you are as passionate as I am about helping people, a little bit like a personal trainer would in a gym, helping people develop strength in their body. You and I are really helping people develop strength in their courage system, in their courage muscle, as it were. So really, to think about the implications of being and operating from a place of non-true nature, misalignment. What would you say to somebody who doesn't know what that means? How would you perhaps describe that, Sarah Jane?
I'm not sure if I'm following you in the question, but, you know, what I would say is that it's almost the fear part that you were talking about is almost like a resilience. When you talk about training, it is. It's about pacing yourself. It's about being willing to get in touch with the emotional component of that and where it shows up in your body. And being able to know that the courage actually is the courage to acknowledge when you're actually frightened, when it is a very real reality for yourself based on those mirror needs, because we know that we all have our stories, and our stories are based on our experiences, and that sometimes it's the stories that are not true. So it may be part of your true nature that the story is very real to you, but it's not the truth. It's just what has been programmed over and over and over again that's formed these neural nets in the brain that keep the story in place. So when you talk about resilience or resistance training, I think for me the biggest part of being in that space of non-attachment is to watch your story. You know, literally put up the projector in your mind and watch the story from a space of just being the story, and then ask how you feel about that. And from a place of questioning, what you'd like to create beyond that so that you can create new stories and new adventures in your life. So I would, really say that creative power often will open up when you're willing to sit in the fear. Doubt and resistance are going to be there every single day. So know that they're going to be there. And then ask yourself how you would like to change that to create a new story. Because stories can be very powerful in building us up, but they can also be very disempowering when we buy into that we can't change the story.
My story for years was I'm a single mother. I went through bankruptcy. There's no way I can build my life back together. And that was a story that, I was running on loop for a long time. I have a 4-step sort of theory that I want to share really quickly regarding fear. And I always say that fear shows up when we are being pulled towards more, something greater. And those indicators can be, as we've mentioned already, depression. They can be, that feeling of just sinking and despair, or it can be something a little lighter like interest or inspiration. So, a change in life isn't always necessarily needing to be instigated by something drastic or dramatic or even traumatic. But first of all is to identify what that fear is. Once you reach that kind of the edge of your comfort zone, is to identify what is the fear, label it, understand it. And then step 2 is to break it down, spend time with it, unpick it, unravel it, and see what fear is underneath the fear, and then underneath the fear. And you can have a lot of fun with that, and it can be so empowering. But then, and you've already mentioned acceptance, Sarah J., step 3 is acceptance. Accept it. I am petrified of X, Y, Z. For example, when I was taking one of my most recent leaps of faith, I was petrified that I would fail and that everyone would point at me and say that you're a failure and a farce, right? So accepting what is and being with yourself with compassion. But then once you accept it, and I have a little kind of role play scenario that kind of goes something like this. If fear were a person coming into the same room as you, for example, you would say something like this: hey, welcome, fear. I'm really glad you showed up today, because you being here indicates to me that things are about to heat up. I'm about to take my life to the next level if I choose to, because we always have a choice. Right? So step 1, identify. Step 2, break it down. Step 3, accept it. Make friends with it. Bring it close to you rather than holding it far apart, because when you bring it close, you're more familiar. You know it. You know what's coming. You know how to handle it. And step number 4 is seize the opportunity and do it anyway. Right? Take that fear with you and use it as a springboard, as a leverage board to launch yourself forward. So very often our true nature does comprise of certain levels of fear.
Yeah. If I could just add something there too, because I love those 4 steps, and what I also share with my clients is get in touch with the part of the fear of the child. So notice when identify. It's just not just about naming it as the grown-up or the adult, but going back to the part of you, finding it in your body, and asking what age was that part when fear showed up as being a critic or shyness or being afraid to be seen as stupid or selfish or arrogant or impatient, because it shows up often at a different age of the person. And this is part of what I practice in my mindfulness process with my clients, is you can get an incredible amount of change a lot quicker when you go back. So it's really about looking at your timeline and really deeply sinking into that intuitive part, because that is living in your true nature. It's the intuitive knowing that part has been hurt, that part is protecting itself as the grown-up, as the adult that you may be. So as you said, Maria, to treat yourself as though you were raising a child and having a conversation with that part of you that is stuck in that neural net, that's stuck in the story at perhaps age 3 or age 5. And I use this process a lot with myself because it really has created so much freedom and space in my life to get in touch with the part that's still holding on to the story. If you can recall a story and it still invokes pain and fear and hurt, that is still running your life. And how you do anything is how you do everything. So, I would invite people to actually go back in that 4-step process that you just described, but to go back as the child that was wounded in the story, and see how much changes from that part rather than as the grown-up you are now. And
I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that. It's so powerful.
Yeah, it really has helped me so much, and I've just seen so much more change with my client because we think, okay, we're grown up, we have to put our big girl panties on, we've got to put on a brave face, we've got to push down the desire that you were speaking of. But when you start to release fear from a timeline of a certain age, and you can identify with that part, and oftentimes you'll feel it in your body, then you can really start to access your true nature as an infinite being that knows all things and all times and all experiences as just a story. So, asking, is it true? Is it true for you now, or is it true from another timeline? And is it fear, or is it something else? Because a lot of times underneath the fear, there's a misidentification. And a lot of people, including myself, I know that a lot of times what I have defined as fear has been based on the feedback from my environment as a child. It's the look on your mother's face when you first started crawling and you're going, oh my gosh, I'm crawling, for example. And the energy, because remember, energy is our first line of communication, on your mother's face was sheer terror because she could see you falling down the steps. So a lot of times fear is actually misidentified excitement. So ask yourself, are you truly afraid, or are you truly excited? And don't let it, then you're not going to stop yourself from actually going toward what energetically is expansion, or as you said, the up level, is that we're constantly evolving and growing. And we're actually capping our growth based on how much we are afraid to step into experiencing the intensity of all the emotions.
Oh, that's such great sharing, Sarah Jane. I want us to now share with our audience how you feel. For somebody perhaps who is on a journey of upgrade, somebody who is maybe in the early stages, or perhaps maybe a bit later on in their journey, and they've been following a formula, perhaps they've been following a certain strategy. I think we've lost Sarah Jane for a second, so I shall carry on. So say you've been on a journey of upgrade and you've been following a strategy, you've been following a formula, you've been following something that you believe is going to get you there. Let's give you an example. For perhaps you are building a business that's passion-based, and you are building your client base. And in order to do that, you have read somewhere, or you have been advised perhaps that you need to go to as many networking events as possible and meet as many people as possible, and keep going in that process, even though you're not getting results, even though it's perhaps bringing you down, it's perhaps exhausting you, you're feeling just a bit edgy, you're feeling perhaps even what we talked about earlier on, depression, despair, maybe you just want to throw the towel in and quit. So in those instances, when you are following what's going on in your outer world, when you are taking perhaps advice or inspiration purely based on someone else's idea of what you should be doing, thinking, or feeling, that has the capacity to pull you completely out of your true nature. Now, another way of saying that is alignment and misalignment. Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you were to think about a train on a railway track, it's a really clear vision in an analogy to have in your mind. When the train is on the track, it runs pretty smoothly, right? Unless there's a block or an obstacle or obstruction. But if the train is on the track, then it's able to slow down when there's an obstacle. It's able to speed up when the track is clear. However, if the train is derailed, misaligned, then it doesn't matter how fast the train is trying to travel, there is going to be no forward movement. Right? It's going to be dangerous, awkward, everything that you don't want to experience with that kind of vehicle. You know, if you apply that principle to you moving forward, alignment versus misalignment, that's what it would feel like. When you're in alignment, you feel completely energized. When you're in alignment, you know exactly what to do next, what telephone call to make, who to speak to, which email to send. When you're in alignment, nothing is really too much trouble, even when you're going through struggles. When you're in misalignment, when you're off topic or outside of your true nature, operating from a false nature, we could also call it that, then that project you're working on or life itself is stunted. It's slow. It's like literally wading through a swamp. So that's a little snippet of a tip of how you can start to really figure out, am I on track? Am I off track? Am I operating as the real me? And how can we do that? How do we know that? So if you imagine footprints on the ground in front of you, right? Footprints on the ground in front of you, and there are a few different ones, two sets of pairs of footprints. Now, in order to really be the real you, you need to stand inside the footprint, so feet inside the shape of the footprint that fits you. It's no use trying to stand inside footprints that are way too small or way too big, right? So being in your truth, standing strongly and firmly in your truth, it feels light, airy, and happy. So are you able to chime in and share about being in alignment versus not being in alignment?
Yeah, I think like you said, it comes back to trust. Again, even if you don't believe in your intuitive nature that you know what you know and go anyway, you've got to get out of this comparison mold, like you said, of asking. For me, I love questions to open up to what is possible rather than getting an answer, because answers are quite conclusionary. So for me, in regards to what you were saying about, if I choose this thing or this person or this project, if I choose to invest in this thing, is it going to be in alignment? Is it going to get me closer to where I am going? That's a great question, to just tap in and feel into your physical body to see if it's expansive. That would be a yes. If it contracts in you, that would be a no. And I think the action is actually trusting that intuitive knowing, trusting that you're going to get where you want to go when you start to trust your internal compass. That's the tracks, as you were saying. It's like if the track doesn't fit anymore, find your north compass, get centered into your body, connect with your physical body, and ground that in before you ask questions. Because if you're coming from, your analytical brain, you're going to talk yourself out of trusting trusting and acting out in your true nature, no matter what anyone else is thinking or telling you or doing themselves. And that really is, for me, the space of ease. And it's not always easy, but that's the space where things really start to flow more, when you stop resisting that gentle, quiet inner nudge that is your intuitive capacity. So, you start to face less resistance and less struggle. It doesn't mean that, you're going to live a doubt-free or resistance-free life, because that's the part where we start to grow, as you were saying. When you're aligned, it lights you up. nothing will stop you. You become unstoppable when you start to listen to that deeper calling that is your truth, and they become more vulnerable triggers for you than fear and shame and doubt and procrastination. So when you pay attention to when your inner critic is getting really, really loud and saying, oh, you can't do that, or where are you going to get the money, if you really start to come back into questioning, if I choose this, will it make me money? It's a great question. Don't avoid asking for that, because money is just an energy of receiving. So, when you start to practice, and life is a big topsy-turvy experiment anyway, you may as well have fun going toward what you want rather than what you don't want. So, I would just say that for that, that's where you really start to be a powerful contribution to others, when you start to look at some of your woundings and go anyway. Whether you've had the trauma or the struggle, that's your PhD of your life experience. That's what people want to know about you. That's what grows trust and builds trust. People don't need to know the tools in your toolbox. They want to know if they can trust you to get them where they want to be, which is away from pain and toward pleasure. It's our human nature to want to access more of that. That is living in your true nature. Mm-hmm. So it's just stop pretending to be something that you're not. Stop avoiding your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and start to listen to them, because it takes so much energy, doesn't it? It's so draining to constantly be in resistance and fighting what you know is true for you. It's just admit.
Exactly. How what we were saying earlier on about how it feels when you're misaligned. It feels heavy. It feels dull. It feels such an effort. Now, I want to quickly touch on, before we wrap up today, one of my big, I'm not even going to call it a top tip, but it's just the biggest thing that I would like to invite, once again, our audience to really take on. This is the only thing that they take away from today's podcast episode, which is the route in which we can, as human beings, achieve everything that we've talked about: trusting, knowing, identifying, courage, acceptance, seizing opportunities, and really just standing in our true nature and operating only from within that zone. And how can we do that? How can we achieve that on a practical level? And that is, for me, finding a way for you. Now, there's a whole long list of modalities that we can tune into, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the traditional meditation, right? Most people, when they think, well, I need to go inside and I need to connect with my higher self or inner being or the universe or God, whatever terminology you individually prefer to use, it doesn't necessarily have to be meditating, although that's something we sort of always kind of think about maybe trying to introduce. It's not always easy for people, though, is it, Sarah Jane? It's not always something that comes easily, and it can freak people out. So finding what it is for you, whether it's out in nature, whether it's journaling, whether it's a guided meditation, whether it's just laying in bed for 5 minutes at night, 5 minutes in the morning before you check your phone or emails, right? Finding a way to clear out all of that mind chatter, all of that density that we accumulate as human beings, as you say, Sarah Jane, from childhood. We bring it with us when we are in that state of nothingness. It's very much like cleaning the blackboard of all of the day's workings out. It's like wiping the slate clean, clearing the table so that you can be in your true nature, in its purity. And it's in that pure moment or a series of moments that the truth will be so strong. It may not happen initially, it may take time, but start with a minute. Start by putting some music on, clearing everyone out of the house, shutting the door, and just be. And by doing that on a regular basis, your trust will develop within the trust for yourself, the self-trust, the courage, the understanding, the self-awareness, the less need for attachment and reliance on other people, on other people's opinions, on other people's guidance, because you have it in you. Your true nature is infinite intelligence and infinite possibilities. So that is what I would like to invite you to do. Now, I know that, Sarah Jane, you're available. I know you're releasing a few slots for people to have a chat with you if they really want to, as am I. Can you give our listeners your details? How can they contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. This is just such important work, and if it's okay with you, Maria, I'd love to offer your listeners, if they're interested in taking this work further. I have a lovely workbook called The 7 Steps Beyond Madness, which is pretty apt because I think we're living in an insane asylum called planet Earth, and nobody knows it, and we're all committed to it. So, it's just a lovely short workbook that will really start to get people into that space where you said, where you can't create mental white space until you've actually listened to the doubt and the resistance. So giving them a chance to speak in the morning is my practice of letting it all come up so that you can clear that mental white space to actually create your life as an adventure. So I'll have that available. I'll send you the link for people to receive that. But if people would like to go in and explore more deeply how to become deeply happy, they can go to my website, sarahjanediamond.com, under contacts, and they can write in there. There is a questionnaire to fill in, and they can go into my booking schedule and book a complimentary 30-minute discovery session with me.
Wonderful. What a beautiful gift. Thank you so much. And because it's the month of August, it's my birthday month. Where I'm from, it's customary. I'm from the island of Cyprus. It's customary for the birthday girl or boy to give gifts. And I know you know this because you have really strong connections with the place too, Sarah Jane. So I'm doing that this month. I'm opening up my schedule and I'm offering giving back to you if you feel ready to access your true nature and start to accelerate your upgrade journey, whatever point you find yourself on right now. So if you would like to connect with me and spend 30 or so minutes with me, you and me, one-on-one, nobody else, no pre-recording, just us being together, figuring out, utilizing that time to help you go from where you are now to a place of upgrade, then go over to the Facebook group, Upgrade with Maria Kay, send me a message, and I will send you a link, a personal link for you, and we will get you booked in for the month of August. Now, if you're listening to this, because these podcasts go in an archive on iTunes and various different places, if you feel, oh, drat, I've missed that one, you haven't. It's okay. Drop me a line and we will see how we can make it work still. Sarah Jane, as always, it's been a pleasure. I know that you and I could go on and on for hours, but for the sake of me keeping the podcast nice and short for everybody to be able to fit into their busy schedules, we're going to have to end. I am feeling really excited at the moment because what we've talked about today is a really powerful angle for you to begin to accelerate your upgrade. You are here on an evolutionary journey. You are here to make progress. It's by our very human nature and spiritual nature to keep moving forward. So despite the fears, despite the blocks, despite the setbacks, we've talked about resilience already. That is something I'd like you to take away with you today. Keep going and be willing to do whatever it takes. I'm excited for you. I know that you have so much potential because if Sarah Jane and I can do it, so can you. I'm leaving you with as much courage and love